I didn't expect to see him again. Not like this. It was a Thursday afternoon, way too warm for late September. I'd just stepped out of my new office building downtown, trying to figure out how to feel like a normal person again after spending the last year rebuilding my life. Work, gym, groceries. That was the plan. Nothing complicated. And then I saw the truck. Old, blue, dented on the left fender. Music playing loud enough that I could hear the bass thumping over traffic. And there he was. Eli, arm out the window, wearing sunglasses, his dark hair messier than I remembered. I froze on the sidewalk like I had been hit. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. 5 years since we'd been best friends. Since the night I kissed him. Since he looked me in the eye, didn't say a word, and just left. Moved out of state. Blocked me on everything. No goodbye, no explanation. I'd told myself I was over it. That I didn't care. But the second I saw him at that stoplight, every part of me lit up like a fucking fire alarm. And then he drove off. Like nothing happened. I stood there long after the light turned green, my chest tight and my thoughts scrambled. Was I losing it? Was that even him? But the license plate. The old band sticker in the back window? It was him. No question. That night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything. How he used to laugh at his own jokes. How we'd sneak beers from his dad's fridge and watch dumb movies on my couch. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. And the way they didn't that last night. I knew I shouldn't do it. But the next day after work, I drove past the mechanic shop his family owned. Just one drive-by. Just to see. And there it was. Same truck, parked out back. Same building. Peeling paint. And everything. Like time had stopped. I sat in my car across the street, gripping the wheel like I was about to go into battle. I told myself it was curiosity. Closure. But it didn't feel like closure. It felt like something cracking open inside me again. I started doing it more often. Driving past after work, pretending like I was just passing through. And then one Friday, I saw him. Outside the shop. Talking to someone, wiping his hands with a rag. Wearing a faded gray t-shirt that clung to his chest in the heat. He looked older, stronger, but still unmistakably Eli. I didn't mean to stop. My foot just hit the brake. I pulled over across the street like a complete idiot. Just sat there, watching him. And then, like he felt me, he turned and saw me. We locked eyes for maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds that felt like a full minute. And then I panicked. Drove off like a maniac. Didn't look back. But it was too late. He saw me. And the next night, he knocked on my door. When I heard the knock, I thought it was my neighbor. Or maybe the Amazon guy. I'd ordered new sheets and a coffee grinder I didn't need. But the moment I opened the door and saw him standing there, everything in my body went still. Eli. Up close, he looked even more like himself, like someone I'd paused in memory 5 years ago and just unpaused now. Same sharp jawline, same watch on his left wrist, same faint scar above his right eyebrow from the time he fell off a skateboard in high school. His eyes flicked past me like he wasn't sure he should be here, but then they locked back on mine. "Hey," he said. Simple. Quiet. I leaned against the door frame, tried not to show the way my heart was banging in my chest. "Hey," he rubbed the back of his neck. Same nervous habit as before. "I saw you yesterday." No kidding. He let out a breath, something between a sigh and a laugh. "You look like you'd seen a ghost." I kind of had. We stood there, this strange, heavy silence stretching between us. It wasn't angry. It wasn't warm either. It was 5 years of unsaid things, just hanging in the air between us. "Can I come in?" he asked. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no. shut the door, move on. But the other part, the one that still remembered what it felt like to fall asleep next to him on the couch, or that night we sat out on the roof for hours, just talking about nothing. One. Yeah, I said. I stepped back and let him in. The moment he walked into my apartment, it felt weird. Not bad, just weird. Like I'd invited the past in, and now had to figure out what the hell to do with it. He looked around. You live alone? Yeah. Nice place. It's fine. I paused. Better than crashing on your couch. That made him smile. Barely. You remember that? Some things are hard to forget. His expression flickered. Just for a second. Like he felt that too. Then he sat on the edge of the armrest, still looking around like he was trying to figure out what had changed about me. So you're back? I asked. Yeah, moved back a couple months ago. I raised an eyebrow. No message? No heads up? He looked down at the floor. Didn't think you'd want to hear from me. That one stung more than I expected. You left without saying anything. I know. He met my eyes. I was an asshole. Yep, silence again. But this one felt different. Tighter. I didn't know what to say, he said after a minute. I didn't even know what I was feeling. That night, I panicked. I noticed. I never meant to just disappear on you. You did, though. He nodded, jaw tightening. I know, and I've regretted it every day since. I didn't know what to do with that. There was so much weight behind his words and so little context. I wanted to ask everything. Why now? Why come back? Why show up at my door like we were still friends? But instead I asked the first thing that came out. Are you still? I paused. I mean, are you? Straight? He finished for me. I gave a tiny shrug. Yeah. He didn't answer right away, just looked down at his hands like he was doing math in his head. When he finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. I don't know what I am, he said. I think that's part of the problem. I stared at him. You kissed me back. His eyes snapped to mine. I know. And then you ran. I know. We sat in that for a long moment. He was the one who broke it again. Look, he said, standing up. I didn't come here to dump a bunch of baggage on you. I just saw you, and I figured it was time to stop pretending I never left things like that. I nodded slowly, unsure if I wanted to hug him or punch him. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, but I just wanted you to know. I didn't forget. I never forgot you. He turned to leave, and maybe I should have let him, but I didn't. Eli, I said. He paused in the doorway. I swallowed. Want to stay for a drink? He turned back around, and the look in his eyes said everything. Yeah, he said. I'd like that. We sat on my tiny balcony with 2 beers between us, the city buzzing below. It wasn't a great view, just rooftops, traffic, and a pizza place across the street, but it was quiet enough to hear yourself think. Neither of us said much at first. Eli leaned back in the chair like he used to when we were younger, arms resting behind his head, ankle crossed over his knee, relaxed on the outside, but his fingers were twitching slightly, like he was trying not to let the silence get to him. I thought you were never coming back, I said finally. I thought so too, he replied. But then my dad got sick. I came back to help with the shop. Is he okay? Yeah, better now. Just needed some time off. I nodded, unsure how to follow that up. You working there now? For now, he said. Not sure if I'm staying, but I don't know. It's weird being back. Everything's the same, but I feel completely different. I took a long drink. You are different. He looked at me, a little curious. In a good way? Too soon to say. That made him laugh softly, which was dangerously familiar. It was the same laugh he used to have when we were 18, and doing something we weren't supposed to, sneaking into the community pool after dark, or climbing out on the roof to talk shit about our futures. I miss this, he said, quieter now. I didn't look at him, just stared out at the glowing red letters of Sal's Pizza across the street. You could have called. I didn't know how. That's bullshit. He nodded, like he couldn't argue with that. Yeah, it is. We fell into a silence that wasn't exactly comfortable, but wasn't awkward either. It was tentative, like trying to rebuild something from old pieces that didn't quite fit the same way anymore. You ever think about that night? He asked suddenly. I turned to look at him. What do you think? He winced a little. Right. We both drank, and the silence stretched again. You kissed me, I said, not as an accusation, just a fact. I know. Then you disappeared. I know. I waited, but he didn't follow up. So I asked the question I'd been avoiding since the moment he knocked on my door. Why? He let out a breath and looked down at his beer. Because I liked it. That wasn't what I expected. At all. But I didn't know what to do with that, he added. It freaked me out. You were my best friend. I'd never even thought about a guy like that before. And then, suddenly, I was thinking about you like that. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My chest felt too tight. I didn't plan it, he continued. It wasn't like I sat there thinking, yeah, tonight I'm gonna make it weird. It just happened. You were sitting next to me, and I looked over, and you looked back, and suddenly everything I thought I knew didn't make sense anymore. And instead of talking to me, you left. Yeah, he said, barely above a whisper. I was scared. I nodded slowly. You could have told me all of this years ago. I know. I would have understood. I didn't think you would. I didn't think I understood. That part hit, because I remembered what it felt like, growing up not knowing how to name what you were feeling, wondering if the people closest to you would turn their backs if they knew. We sat there a long time, the city stretching out in front of us, both a little too raw to pretend we were fine. Eventually, Eli stood up. I should go. I stood too, walked him to the door. He hesitated on the threshold, hand on the doorknob. Thanks for not slamming the door in my face, he said. I considered it. That smile again. He turned to leave, but stopped. Hey, do you want to hang out sometime? Like, actually hang out? You mean like old times? He paused. Maybe, or maybe something different. I didn't answer right away, but then I said, yeah, let's see what happens. His smile widened just slightly, and then he nodded, stepped into the hall, and disappeared. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding since he showed up. Whatever this was, it wasn't over, not even close. The next time I saw him was Sunday afternoon. He texted me around noon, just a simple "you around?" and 15 minutes later, he was at my door with 2 iced coffees and a hesitant smile. No plans, no expectations. Just Eli, acting like maybe we could pretend we hadn't been strangers for 5 years. We spent the day doing what we used to do best, absolutely nothing. He flopped onto my couch like it still belonged to him, and we got caught in a loop of stupid YouTube videos, half-watched movies, and more comfortable silences than I expected. It was almost easy, like no time had passed at all. Almost. Because underneath the jokes and the casual touches, like when he nudged me with his knee during a dumb meme or handed me a drink and let our fingers brush too long, there was something simmering, something heavier. I didn't bring it up, neither did he, but by the time the sun started going down and my apartment was lit only by the soft glow from the kitchen and the TV, that weight between us felt almost impossible to ignore. He was lying on the other end of the couch, one arm thrown over his head, legs stretched out toward me. His foot rested, just barely, against my knee. I didn't move it. I think he noticed. You ever think about what it would have been like if I hadn't left? He asked suddenly. I glanced over. Yeah, all the time. He looked surprised that I said it so plainly. Maybe he expected me to deflect. But I was too tired to lie. I thought about it more than I wanted to, I said. Especially at first. I kept wondering if I'd messed something up, or if maybe it really was just a mistake. It wasn't, he said quickly. Not to me. My throat tightened, and I had to look away. Then why'd you run? Because I didn't trust myself, he said. I was terrified I'd screw it up. Or worse, that I hadn't screwed it up and it meant something I wasn't ready to deal with. We sat in that. He sat up a little straighter. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did you hate me after that? The question landed harder than I expected. No, I said. I tried to. For a while. I wanted to. But I couldn't. He looked down at his hands, fidgeting with the sleeve of his sweatshirt. You should've. I know. The room felt warm. Too quiet. I could hear traffic outside. Someone yelling down the street. But here in this space, with him, everything felt suspended, like we were both holding our breath, waiting for the other to move first. You're not the only one who was scared, I said. I kissed you, and for a second, I thought maybe you were going to kiss me back. I was going to, he said quietly, but I didn't know how to deal with what that meant. And now? He looked at me then, really looked. I still don't, but I know I want to try. That hit different. Not in some dramatic way, just quietly, in a place I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. I stood up and walked toward the kitchen, not to avoid him, just to think. I poured us both some water, trying to slow my breathing, then came back. He hadn't moved. When I handed him the glass, our fingers touched again, and this time, he didn't pull away. Neither did I. We sat there, close now, shoulders almost touching, and for a long moment, neither of us said a word. You want to stay over? I asked. It wasn't a move. It wasn't about closeness. It just felt like the right question. He looked at me, surprised, then nodded. Yeah, he said. If that's okay? Yeah, I said. It's okay. I grabbed him a blanket and a spare pillow. He stretched out on the couch while I brushed my teeth, trying to pretend this was just a normal night. But when I came back out, he was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I turned off the lights and stood there for a second, watching him breathe. And then I whispered, mostly to myself, don't run this time. He didn't run. When I woke up the next morning and walked out into the living room, he was still there, curled up on the couch, one arm flung across his face, blanket tangled around his legs. He looked younger like that, softer. I stood there for a minute, just watching him. I wasn't even sure why. Maybe part of me still didn't believe he was real, that he was actually back, that this was actually happening. He stirred as I walked into the kitchen. What time is it? He mumbled. Just after 8, he groaned, stretching. Shit. I was supposed to be at the shop by 9. I passed him a mug of coffee. You've got time. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes before taking the coffee with a quiet, thanks. His hair was a mess. His t-shirt was wrinkled, and somehow it was the most comfortable we'd looked around each other in years. I slept like a rock, he said. Guess the guilt wore you out, he smirked. That, or your couch is secretly more comfortable than it looks. We sat in silence for a few minutes, sipping coffee. I leaned against the counter, watching the light spill in through the window. He sat on the edge of the couch, one foot tapping the floor, his body still waking up. Then he asked, So what are we doing? I blinked. What do you mean? He looked at me, serious now. This, you and me. I know I hurt you, I know I left, and I'm not trying to come back into your life like nothing happened. But if we're doing this again, I want to do it right. You don't have to decide everything today. I know, but I don't want to pretend I don't care either. Because I do. He set the coffee down, stood up, and walked over to where I was leaning. His eyes searched mine like he was waiting for permission to get closer. I didn't move. I meant what I said yesterday, he said. I don't know exactly what I am, but I know that being around you feels right. It always did. I just didn't know how to name it before. I looked at him. This version of him, older, quieter, but somehow more honest. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was still cautious, still unsure. But the part of me that used to ache when I thought of him, It had softened into something else. "I'm not asking for a label," I said. "I just want you to be real with me. No more disappearing, no more half-truths. Just be here." He nodded. "I can do that." And then, for the first time in 5 years, he reached for my hand. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even romantic. Not really. Just fingers brushing, then settling. But it felt bigger than anything he could have said out loud. He looked down at our hands, then back up. "Can I take you out? Like a date?" I laughed. "You mean tonight?" "No," he said. "Eventually. When you're ready." I considered it. Not just the idea of dating him again, but what that would actually mean. Rebuilding something from scratch. Risking another crack in a heart I'd only just learned to patch up. But he was still holding my hand. Still here. "Yeah," I said. "We'll get there." He smiled. Not wide. Not cocky. Just quiet and real. Then he glanced at the clock and swore. "Shit, I gotta go." "Tell your dad I said hi." He grabbed his hoodie from the back of the chair, then hesitated in the doorway. "I'll text you later?" "You better." He gave me one last look, one of those looks that said more than either of us were ready to, and then he left. I stood there alone in the kitchen, coffee still warm in my hand, and realized I wasn't waiting for closure anymore. I was waiting for whatever came next. The days that followed felt like something new. We didn't jump straight into anything big. No dramatic declarations, no sudden relationship labels. Just quiet, consistent presence. Eli texted me every day. Sometimes just a meme, sometimes a full conversation. He came over twice that week, once to help me fix a leaky faucet. He made it worse before it got better. And once just to hang out and eat takeout on the floor of my living room while we watched a movie neither of us finished. It felt normal, familiar, and completely foreign at the same time, because this version of Eli, he didn't flinch anymore when things got quiet. He didn't pull away when our legs touched on the couch, and every time he looked at me, it wasn't with confusion or hesitation. It was with intention. One Friday night, we ended up back at my place after grabbing dinner. It was warm enough to sit on the balcony. Just like the first night he showed up. He brought a six-pack. I brought chips. We sat in hoodies and socks, talking about nothing. "I forgot how good this feels," he said. "Just being around you." "You say that like I'm a massage chair." He nudged my knee with his. "I mean it. I used to feel like I couldn't breathe right when I was around other people, like I had to play a part. With you, I never had to." I didn't say anything at first, just took a slow sip of my beer and let the words settle. Then I asked, "Did it ever feel like that with me, after that night?" He looked over. "No, that's what scared me." I raised an eyebrow. He sighed. "It didn't feel wrong. That's what messed me up. I kept thinking it was supposed to. But it didn't. It felt like the thing I didn't know I wanted. The air between us shifted again, heavier, closer. The city below buzzed with life, but up here, it felt like everything had narrowed down to this small space between us. He turned toward me, expression unreadable. "I think about kissing you all the time." I blinked. "That a fact?" He nodded. "I haven't stopped thinking about it since the first time." I could have said something sarcastic. Could have teased him like I always did. But I didn't. I just looked at him, really looked, and said, "Then maybe you should." He leaned in slowly, cautiously, like he was still afraid I might pull back. But I didn't. Our foreheads touched for just a second, and then his lips met mine. It wasn't rushed, wasn't messy or desperate, like the first time all those years ago. It was steady, warm, honest, and when he pulled back, he kept his forehead against mine. I should have done that the day I came back. "You're doing it now," I said quietly. We sat like that for a while, knees touching, the taste of him still lingering on my lips. The sky had darkened. My beer had gone warm. but I couldn't bring myself to care. Eventually, we moved inside. I tossed him a blanket, but he didn't take the couch this time. He stood in my bedroom doorway, just looking at me, not asking, not assuming. I lifted the corner of the comforter and said, "Come here." He climbed in beside me, and we lay there for a long time, fully clothed, backs to the wall, facing each other. "Are you scared?" I asked. "Terrified," he whispered. "But I want to be here." I nodded, fingers brushing his under the covers. "Then we'll figure it out. Together." And that night, we didn't do anything more than fall asleep side by side, his breath slow and even against my neck, his arm resting loosely around my waist. And for the first time in years, I didn't dream about the past, I just dreamt about him. I woke up before him. The sun hadn't fully come up yet, just a soft gray light spilling in through the blinds. I stayed still, listening to his breathing, slow, steady. His hand was still resting on my waist, and I could feel the warmth of his chest against my back. I didn't want to move, because this quiet morning stillness was the kind of thing I used to fantasize about. Not some dramatic confession, not a big, sweeping moment. Just waking up next to him, feeling him breathe, knowing he was still there. He stirred a little, pulling me in closer like it was second nature. "Mornin'," he mumbled, voice gravelly. "Morning," I said. Neither of us moved. Neither of us needed to. After a few minutes, he whispered, "I keep thinking I'm gonna wake up, and this'll be some weird dream." I turned slightly to face him. "You're not dreaming," he smiled, sleepy and soft. "Good." Eventually, we got up, made coffee, talked about nothing, groceries, errands, the fact that my fridge was offensively empty. It was normal, and yet it wasn't. Because everything felt new. Lighter, we didn't define anything that morning, didn't label it, but something had clearly shifted. The air between us felt less fragile, less filled with questions. A few days later, he invited me over to his place. His room above the garage at his dad's house looked almost exactly like I remembered. Old posters, toolbox in the corner, a beat-up guitar in the corner he never learned how to play. "You haven't changed this place at all," I said. "Yeah," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "Thought about it. Never got around to it." He walked over and sat on the bed, and I followed. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "So, my dad asked if I was seeing someone." I raised an eyebrow. "What'd you tell him?" "Told him I was trying." I smiled. "You are." He looked over at me, more serious now. "I want to do this right, with you." "You are," I repeated. "We both are." He took my hand. Not like it was a big deal, like it was just something he could do now. And that meant more than any grand gesture ever could. We stayed like that, side by side, fingers intertwined, talking until it got dark. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. The first time he kissed me in public, it wasn't some big moment. We were at a street fair, of all places, some Saturday afternoon thing downtown, food trucks, live music, too many dogs and strollers. He reached for my hand as we walked between booths, and I let him take it without hesitation. And then, while we were standing in line for tacos, he just leaned in and kissed me. Quick. Soft. Like it wasn't a question anymore. Nobody said anything. A few people noticed, but it was nothing. Just two guys at a taco truck. Just Eli, being Eli. Like, this had always been normal for us. It wasn't. But it was starting to be. Later, back at my apartment, I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing dishes, when he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "You know," he said into my shoulder, "I used to picture this. Me doing your dishes?" He laughed. "No, just us, like this, being normal. This is normal." "I know. That's the crazy part." I turned around, water dripping from my hands onto the floor. "You scared?" "Yeah," he said honestly, "but I'm not running." And he didn't. Not the next week, not the one after. We had awkward moments. Of course we did. Sometimes we didn't know how to talk about things. Sometimes old habits came back. Him shutting down, me overthinking. But we worked through it, slowly, steadily, together. Eventually, he moved in, not in some planned adult way. Just started staying over more and more, until there was no point in pretending he didn't live there. He kept a toothbrush in the bathroom. His clothes took over a drawer. He brought his record player over and insisted it had to be in the living room, despite it being vintage and deeply unreliable. And me? I let him. Because every time I came home and saw his shoes by the door, it felt like my chest could finally exhale. One night, a few months in, we were sitting on the couch, our legs tangled under a blanket, the window cracked open to let in the night air. He was half asleep, his head on my shoulder, when he whispered something. I loved you back then. I just didn't know how. I looked down at him, his eyes barely open, his breath warm against my skin. I know, I said. Me too. He fell asleep a few minutes later, his hand resting against my chest. And I sat there in the quiet, heart full, in a way I didn't know was possible. Because this wasn't the story I thought we'd have. It was better,